Devi.
Jai, Tulsi Maharani ki Jai. We offer our most respectful obeisances to all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. We're just like desire trees who can fulfill the desires of everyone and the full compassion for the Ishibad. His Divine Grace Sabaya Charanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Friends, say Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shadwaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Sayam Kund Radha Kundak Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Mathuranam Ki Jai Jagannath Swami Ki Jai Yamunamai Ki Jai Shrimati Lasi Devi Ki Jai Samveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya, Putle Srimati Bhaktivedanta Samaniti Namani Namaste, Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharni Nivesesa Sinyavadi, Paschatyateja Tarni. So, before beginning class, I just want to mention one thing that Krishna Priya just told me, is that yesterday was either the appearance or disappearance of Lokanath Goswami, and it wasn't spoken about yesterday. So I'll just mention very briefly about Lokanath Goswami. So, Om Gada Timananda Shah Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshur Unmeditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, Lokanath Goswami was an associate of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Navadvip. And he loved Chaitanya Mahaprabhu so much that he didn't want to see Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as a sannyasi. Because sannyasi means a renunciate, and generally when the devotees worship Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they worship on the altar as a grahasta, not as a sannyasi. So, therefore, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to send him away before he took sannyas. And also, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted him to prepare the ground for the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan who were to come later on. In other words, he prepared everything in Vrindavan for Rupa, Sanatana, and the other Goswamis of Vrindavan. So, Lokanath Goswami also had a friend named Bhugarbha Goswami, and they were very intimate friends. And I don't remember their ontological position in Braj. Maybe you do. You have a good memory. I don't remember because I was just told 5 minutes ago to speak about him. So anyway, he was sent to Vrindavan, and then later on when he heard Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was touring India, I think it was Benares, he left to see Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Benares. And then he discovered when he got there that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had gone to Vrindavan. And then he heard Lord Chaitanya went to Vrindavan. So he went back to Vrindavan. Lord Chaitanya had left by that particular point. Later on, he heard Lord Chaitanya went to South India, and he was thinking, we should go to South India to see Lord Chaitanya. But then he had a dream, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu forbade him from going to South India to see him and just stay in Vrindavan. And he basically had the association of the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, and a great devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So yesterday was his either appearance or disappearance day. Anyway, so now we'll go on to Srimad Bhagavatam, and unfortunately the mouse is not working or the computer is not advancing. I even tried the keyboard. So reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 46th verse, text 15. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhojatam Paramanena Sangvishtang Kashipao Sukham Gata Shamam Aparya Prichat Pada Asangva Anadipi Bhojatam Paramanena Samvishtam Kashipau Sukham Gatashramam Paryaprichat Pada Samvahanadipi Bhojatam Paramanena Samvishtam Kashipau Sukham Gatashramam Paryaprichat Pada Samvahanadipi Bhojatam Paramanena Sangvishtam Kashipau Sukham Gatashramam Paryaprichat Pada Sangvahanadipi. Okay. Oh, you got it working. All right. Okay. Bhojatam fed. Parama Anena with first class food. Song Vishtam seated. Kashipao on a nice bed. Sukham comfortably. Gata relieved. Shamam of fatigue. Paryaprichat he inquired. Pada of his feet. Samvahana with massaging. Adibi and so on. So translation, after Uddhava had eaten first-class food, been seated comfortably on a bed, and been relieved of his fatigue by a foot massage and other means, Nanda inquired from him as follows. You can repeat. After Uddhava had eaten first-class food, been seated comfortably on a bed, and been relieved of his fatigue by a foot massage and other means, Nanda inquired from him as follows. So, purport by the followers of His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So Shilaji Goswami mentions that Nanda had a servant massage Uddhava's feet since Uddhava was Nanda's nephew. So I'll just briefly read the commentaries. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, Nanda fed Uddhava rice cooked in milk. From the day that Krishna had departed from Mathura, the kitchens of the people of Braja were left unswept and dirty, filled with leaves, grass, dust, and spider webs. Yeah, because they were in a state of transcendental depression. Not actually depression, it's transcendental ecstasy of separation. The people of Braj maintained their lives by buttermilk, yogurt, and milk given by neighbors. They simply lamented, "We have died." So in other words, they didn't have the energy to do any of those things for themselves, so the neighbors gave it to them. But on this particular day, understanding Nanda's anxiety, that when Uddhava comes, he should not suffer from hunger, one Brahmana accompanying Nanda cooked a quantity of broken rice with milk for one person. Not, even Yashodamai didn't cook. Massaging Uddhava's feet was performed by a servant, since Uddhava was his nephew and therefore an inferior. So, Jiva Goswami says basically the same thing. Sanatana Goswami says basically the same thing. Okay, let's go back to the verse. Mojitam paramanena samvishnam kashipau sukham gatashramam paryaprichat parasamvahanadipe. So Omagana Timranda Shah Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshur Un Militam Yena Tasmai Shigurvena Maha. So what we're seeing here, apart from the separation the resident Vrindavan are experiencing towards Krishna, is a perfect manifestation of Vaishnava etiquette or etiquette. Now, etiquette can be understood in several different ways. Etiquette can mean manners, good manners. It could also mean behavior, just describing someone's behavior. So, understanding etiquette is extremely important. Why is it important? I mean, one may question because in the Western culture, we're very much interested in doing away with what we call hierarchy. Everyone's heard of hierarchy before? Hierarchy means like a pecking order, like who's better than who, like that. So the reason for that we've thrown all this away, because we see that all of our leaders, not Krishna conscious leaders, but our leaders in society have what we call clay feet. That's an expression. That means they are misleaders, as described in the Bhagavatam, that they are anda yatandar, upagiyamanas, tepishitantram urudam nibala. They are blind people, and they're taking the role of leaders, and they're leading other people who are also blind, and they're both falling into a ditch. This is the description of the Bhagavatam. So therefore, we've pretty much lost faith in all sorts of leaders in society. I mean, just like all of them. I'm not commenting on any particular leader. It's just like, oh my God, politicians, whatever. And so we have a system of government which is probably the best of all worlds. I was discussing this in Germany with one of my disciples. He was telling me about the problems with democracy. And I said, well, give me a system that in Kali Yuga works. Of course, obviously the system would be Varnashram, but you need some saintly persons who are the Brahmins. You need some saintly administrators who were the Kshatriyas who would follow the Brahmanas. You would need some good Vaishyas who would maintain them all, and you need some people who just understood that you just serve the other people. So, but yes, I understand. But if you examine the other systems of government that we have in the present, like the monarchy, of course we have in America. It's not really a democracy; it's an oligarchy. It's controlled practically in every country. It's like that, not in every country, but it's controlled by the will of the rich, the wealthy people. Even, of course, even in Russia, you talk about the oligarchs, isn't it? The oligarchs. Of who the leader of Russia is probably the richest one. I was reading about his opulent train that he has last night. I was reading about that. So anyway, so people, we've lost faith in the leaders. So the best of all of any of the systems nowadays appears to be democracy, because at least you got the checks and the balances like that. So, but there's a reason for etiquette. And this etiquette is not meant to be followed blindly, although there are certain rules and regulations for etiquette. Rules like respect. We're talking about ordinary etiquette now, and then I'll get into Vaishnava etiquette in a few minutes. Like, there's a difference between the elders and the young people, not just that the elders have old bodies and the young people have young bodies, because in a society that's based on spiritual culture, the elders are like a repository of experience and a repository of knowledge. I know when I first took up Krishna consciousness, even after Srila Prabhupada left this world, and even after I took sannyas, I might have thought I was a repository of knowledge. But actually I've learned that, I'm not going to use that word, let's say a heck of a lot since then. And, I like to share with the devotees my experience. So there's that particular etiquette that helps one respect elders. And practically in most traditional cultures, you have a lot of respect for elder people because they're the ones with the experience. Of course, in the modern day Kali Yuga, they're the ones with who have been degraded the most. So it's sort of upside down. So the Hari Bhakti Vilas actually prescribes rules and regulations for this etiquette, actually ordinary etiquette and Vaishnava etiquette. And there's many examples of Vaishnava etiquette and ordinary etiquette in the Vedic literatures. One in the Srimad Bhagavatam that comes to mind is the example of Vidura, who was associating with Maitreya. And with Uddhava and Maitreya, sorry. I missed one person. He's associating with Uddhava, and Uddhava and Maitreya were both there when Krishna was leaving the planet. So Krishna was leaving the planet, and Uddhava and Maitreya got some instructions from Krishna that were supposed to be in relationship with Vidura, right? And so therefore, Vidura wanted to find out, what did Krishna say? What are the instructions that Krishna gave me? And so Uddhava said that, I know the instructions, but I'm not going to give you the instructions because there's someone senior nearby. So there was the respect of seniority in that particular case. Even though, in one sense, you could say that Uddhava was actually on a higher spiritual platform than Maitreya. But still, he did not take the position of guru, instructing guru in that particular circumstance, because he had this etiquette that he observed. Sometimes people could say, well, that's very artificial. He should have taken instruction from Uddhava. But this point was made very clearly by Srila Prabhupada in his purport to this particular section of Srimad Bhagavatam. He says that, Krishna doesn't accept someone who violates etiquette. Even he's talking about ordinary etiquette in this particular regard. I know our minds are rebelling hearing this stuff. Etiquette, elder people. Of course, why is he saying that? Just because he's older? He wants everyone to respect him. He's probably the oldest person in the room. So, maybe not. So, but it's this verse brought this to mind. And so probably the expression is Maryada Vyatikrama. He says someone who violates ordinary etiquette is not accepted by Krishna and Krishna consciousness. Very interesting. And actually, even we see that when Srila Prabhupada was giving association to some of his devotees, I remember Ramananda and Gargamuni, who were both brothers, and of course they had the same mother. And the mother came to see Prabhupada. Prabhupada was older than the mother, so he could actually do things like tell the mother that, would you be willing to give some money to pay for your kid's tuition? And the mother of both of them became pretty upset. And she said, basically, I've given you my sons, and now you want money too. That's just paraphrasing what she said. But probably because of the etiquette, Prabhupada oftentimes would say that because I'm older, I can say this. Now, it's not that if you're a young person and you say to, the parents of some devotee here, in North Carolina, that you say, please give some money for the devotee's maintenance, it would be an insult. So anyway, so she got upset. And then, or before that, Prabhupada had these devotees offer respects to their mother. They would actually go to their mother and, on Prabhupada's instruction, and touch her feet. Now, that's quite shocking for a Western lady, isn't it? To have her sons come up. I mean, I don't think that Ishwara touches his mother's feet very often. Do you? Did you ever do that? There's some disagreement there. Etiquette-wise, you're not supposed to disagree with your mother. So anyway. So that's one example where Prabhupada really, and you see Prabhupada associating with his godbrothers, observed this etiquette and instructed the devotees, observe this etiquette and instructed the devotees, even relationship to himself. It's not that Prabhupada was not interested in proper adoration, distinction, someone worshiping him, but he was interested in that etiquette being observed, because that's really what keeps society together. And then on the other hand, you have examples where the etiquette wasn't followed and basically there was a problem. For example, in the case of Ramchandra Puri, we had his spiritual master, Madhavendra Puri, leaving this planet, getting ready to leave the planet. And Madhavendra Puri was crying out in separation, "Oh my Lord, I have not reached Mathura." And his disciple had the effrontery, the gall, the stupidity, can't think of any other words right now, to instruct his spiritual master in Brahman. I mean, not only was he off in terms of philosophy, but he was off in terms of etiquette. And what the spiritual master do? He just said, "I have not reached Mathura, and now this rascal has come to harass me. Get out of here, I don't want to see your face anymore." And, of course, we know as a result of that, Ramchandra Puri became a great offender to the Vaishnavas and even offended Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, there's instructions like that. And then one thing I found interesting was that sometimes people will switch positions in the hierarchy too. I was listening to this class by Prabhupada the other day, and it was one of the early classes on the Bhagavad Gita. And in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, you find Arjuna sort of saying, I'm going to do what I want to do, Krishna, right? He said, Krishna takes him to the middle of the battlefield. Arjuna looks at everyone and says, Govinda, I'm not going to fight. He just directly says that. But at a certain point, Arjuna says, I'm a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. So the roles switch at that point. Even though Arjuna, he's not really arguing with Krishna later on in the Gita. You see, the mood actually switches, whereas Krishna takes a superior position in the hierarchy, whereas previously, right, they were just equals. They were buddies. They were lying on the bed together and, I guess punching each other, whatever friends do. Hey, Krishna, And, Arjuna at one point came across, was it Kalindi? And Kalindi, Kalindi on the bank of the Jamuna, and she said, I want you to introduce me to Krishna. So Arjuna went to Krishna and said, I have a girl for you, as the saying goes. And so they, basically, it was really buddies. So the roles switched, and all of a sudden, Arjuna observes the hierarchy, which is really interesting. I mean, he's presenting to Krishna his doubts. Obviously, it's not that one should be blindly following. It's not that when Arjuna surrendered to Krishna as a disciple, he didn't say, okay, let's fight, and the whole Bhagavad Gita was over. I mean, that's when the Bhagavad Gita began at that particular point. So in order for spiritual information to be transmitted, there has to be some sort of hierarchy, isn't it? I mean, it's just practical. Has to be some sort of hierarchy. And then sometimes you find one authority overriding another authority. This is an interesting example in the Bhagavatam about Priyavrata. Priyavrata was instructed by Narada Muni, and Narada Muni has this tendency to try to convince people to not get entangled in this world. I mean, sometimes that happens. Just like we're reading the Jaiva Dharma now in the evening about this devotee who is actually, his parents are trying to arrange a marriage and he's getting all upset and everything like that. Rajanath. And so anyway, so Narada Muni convinces Priyavrata, his disciple, take sannyas. Priyavrata says, thank you, Guru Maharaj. He's ready to take sannyas, completely renounced. It's not that he's improperly situated to take sannyas. But then there's a problem because they need someone to take over. Someone to become GBC. Well, it's interesting. Prabhupada said originally that he wanted all the GBCs to be married, and when someone took sannyas, he kicked them off the GBC. But later on, he saw that his best managers he had already made sannyasis of. So there was nothing to do. You can't unsannyas someone once they become a sannyasi. So what happened is that they called for Narada Muni's spiritual master. Who was that? That was Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma came and said, all right. And Narada Muni said, he's my guru. There's the hierarchy there. So it's interesting to see that particular situation. And so then you have some circumstances where it's all right to violate that hierarchy. As we said, blind following and absurd inquiries are condemned. And one instance that comes to mind is the famous story of Bali Maharaj. Bali Maharaj had his spiritual master whose name was Shukracharya. And Shukracharya was giving him pretty good advice. I mean, it was even advising him to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he was worshiping Vishnu for the purpose of becoming very powerful and being in charge of the heavenly kingdom, etc. like that. And he was very faithful to his Guru Maharaj. So what happened is along comes Lord Vamanadev. And Vamanadev, Lord Vamanadev, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he appears as a dwarf Brahmin. And Bali Maharaj greets him nicely, following the etiquette. Because etiquette is not only based on age, it's based on a lot of different factors. I mean, especially respecting brahmanas, people who have the qualities of brahmanas. What is the quality of the brahmanas? Samam damak tabak jocham shanti rajavameva jagana viganamastikam brahma karma swabhavajam. Quality of brahmana is someone who's equipoised, self-controlled, austere, does everything for spiritual purposes, tolerant, religious, etc., understands the philosophy, practices the philosophy. Not necessarily, I was hearing another class this morning by Prabhupada, not necessarily someone who's extremely educated and can quote a lot of verses. That's not really what a Brahmin is. Like Prabhupada was talking about this one Brahmin who had faith in his spiritual master, and he was reading the Bhagavad Gita in spite of being illiterate, and Lord Chaitanya said, "You are the real knower of the Bhagavad Gita," because he had understood the ras and the bhav with Krishna and Arjuna, even though he was illiterate, because he was following the order of his Guru Maharaj and had sense control. So that's really what a Brahmin is. Oftentimes, we think that a Brahmin is just someone who's extremely educated and quote a lot of verses and give a nice class and stuff like that. I was actually thinking about that in regard to sometimes there's some proposal to make certain levels of education absolutely required for people who take Brahmin initiation, and I'm thinking sometimes, I mean, of course, I did take Bhakti Shastri, but I'm thinking that sometimes you have someone like Jayananda Prabhu who would never pass a Bhakti Shastri exam. He knew the philosophy perfectly, could preach nicely, but no verses. Couldn't even say his Gayatri mantra. Isn't it? It's interesting. Couldn't even say the Gayatri. Prabhupada said, just think of him. That's Prabhupada while you're chanting instead of trying to chant the mantra. So anyway, there's a special etiquette in regard to Brahmins and other members of society who give it, old people who give it respect. And there's also etiquette in regard to cows. It's not that cows are considered, you take instruction from cows, but you protect cows, you protect women, you protect children. So this Brahmin comes in, and of course, I think Bali must have realized he was the Supreme Personality of Godhead too. But in any case, he offered the Brahmin whatever you want. This is a Brahmin boy, and the Brahmin boy said, I just want 3 steps of land. Bali Maharaj said, this is not so intelligent. You could have anything. I'll give you a wife even, or kingdom, or whatever, a whole city. And Lord Vamanadev said, no, if one's not satisfied with one little 3 steps of land, one will never be satisfied with anything, which is actually really good instruction. So then Bali Maharaj said, okay, I'll give you 3 steps of land. And his Guru Maharaj says, no, he's God. Stop. He's going to take away everything. And Bali Maharaj said, no, Guru Maharaj. Basically, I'm paraphrasing how he was thinking. I don't know if he actually said it, but he acted in such a way. He said, no, Guru Maharaj, I'm going to give him what he's asking for. And Guru Maharaj cursed him even. Said, you're going to lose everything. He's going to take everything away from you. And you're not going to be able to give him what he wants, and then he's going to imprison you. He actually predicted what was going to happen. By his curse came true. The curse of the Guru came true. So then, of course, Bali Maharaj first gives him the sacred water to indicate that he was going to give him the 3 steps of land, and Guru Maharaj tried to stop his disciple from being in what he thought was Maya by putting himself in the little spout of the pitcher so the water couldn't be poured out of the pitcher. And And Vamanadevi just took a little kusha grass and made Guru Maharaj blind in one eye. So, anyway, so then, of course, we know Lord Vamana took away everything from Bali Maharaj and eventually pushed him down to Pataloka and became his doorkeeper or guard for the prison house in Pataloka. And later on, Bali Maharaj would become actual Indra. And he's a great devotee. He's considered a great devotee because he disobeyed or violated etiquette in that particular juncture. It's interesting, isn't it? So it's not. So Prabhupada said, blind following and absurd inquiries are condemned. So it requires some intelligence, not that one blindly follows etiquette. I mean, even in the case of, okay, let's take the case of Narada Muni preaching to the sons of Daksha. You know, the etiquette was they should have followed their parents. But Narada Muni speaks metaphorically. He says, you really understand who your father is. You know, so you got to follow your father. Okay, who's your father? Let's think about it. Krishna. What does Krishna want you to do? Very, very interesting points about etiquette. So here we see Nanda Maharaj is very expert in etiquette. I want to read one quote that I wrote down here. Let's see, where Sanatana Goswami is being instructed by the Lord in etiquette. He said, this is Lord Chaitanya speaking. Whatever you want to do, you will be able to do correctly by Lord Krishna's favor. He will manifest the real purport. Because you asked me for synopsis, means a summary, please hear these few indications. My dear Sanatan, although you are to deliver the entire universe, and even though the demigods and great saints are purified by touching you, it is the characteristic of a devotee to observe and protect the Vaishnava etiquette. Maintenance of the Vaishnava etiquette is the ornament of a devotee. Now, Vaishnava etiquette takes into account ordinary etiquette and actually takes into account the rules and regulations given by Rupa Goswami, especially Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami, as far as, let's say, the deity worship, interacting with other Vaishnavas, everything like that. Yeah, and cleanliness. I mean, all sorts of rules of behavior, which are really interesting. Another quote from the Anshalila is, if one transgresses the laws of etiquette, people make fun of him, and thus he is vanquished in this world and in the next. Here's another quote, one quote we'll just end with. Since nothing can be successful without sadachar, or etiquette, every action should be performed with proper etiquette. The heart of a saintly person is free from contamination. The way a saintly person acts is known as proper etiquette. The way a saintly person acts is known as sadachar. So Prabhupada's example. So we take Prabhupada's example as perfect etiquette. I mean, there's a lot more to be said about etiquette, but that's what I thought we'd speak about today. So, time to greet the deities. No time for questions. Prabhupada's acharya, so we know, it takes some intelligence to figure out etiquette. And so it takes, so we need association of other devotees, Dadati Pratigurati Guyagati Prichati, to understand proper behavior and improper behavior and what to avoid and what to accept. So, on that happy note,
Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Jamin Govindam
Adipurusham Tamaham Jamin Mainam Kanvandam Maravindanalaya Taksham Varhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandar Agom Vikamaniya Vishesha Shobha
Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Jamin
Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasa Sakalen Kriya Priti Manti Vasyanti Pan Vikayanti Naganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Jala Vigrahasya
Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Jamin
Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham
Jamin. Namaho Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Mutalai Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Samini Chitamane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gurvani Cha Nivesesha Shunyavale Ashachale Satarinde Nivesesha Sunyavale Ashachale Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadada Siva Sadi Gaurata Brenda Advaita Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadada Siva Sadi Gaurata Brenda Night Dana Shri Advaita Radha Shiva Sade Gauravarna Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Shiva Sade Gauravarna Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jai Ram, Hey, Jaya, hey, Rate, Nayat, hey, Rade, Rade, Rate, Jaya Rade, Jaya Sri Radhe, Jai Om Vishnupad.
Chaitadarpanam Arjanam Bhavamahadavaki Nirvapanam Shreya Kairavya Chandrika Vitaranam Anandamudi Varanam Pradipanam Paramidaswaranam Sarvatmasnapanam Paramvidayate Sankirtanam Niyamita smaranena kala etadrishita vakripa bhagavan mamapi dordaya mitvishamiha janina raga vinadapi sunijena tarorapi sahishuna amanina manadena kirtaniya sadahari nadanam najanam nasundarim Kavitam va jagadisha kamae mama janmani janmani ishvare. Thank you. Bhava tad bhaktir ahoite ki twai ainanda tanuja kinkaram patitam mam vishameva vam buddha kripayata vabhavat kankaja stita duli satrisham vichintaya nayanam galashudaraya vadanam gad gadaridaya gira pulakarnishitam vapukada Tava nama grahane bhavishyati yuga yatam namishena chakshusha pravashayatam shunayatam jagat sarvam govindam virahena me ashlisha vapadamritam manastumam adarshanam marmahata karotuva yatatata vavandatolam patomat prananatastu savanapara. Victory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of repeated birth and death. The Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. Oh, my Lord, congregational chanting of your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings And thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you've invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. Oh, my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw on the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service birth after birth. O Son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet somehow or other I have fallen into the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. Oh, my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up? And when will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your name? Oh, Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I am feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he shall remain so even if he handles me roughly by his embrace or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally.